Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. So, last episode we rescued Nathaniel Grexus, and he essentially he understands that we're Inquisitors and can mess him up, so he decided to help us.
My sweet Ragnar, what a cheerful sight for these sore eyes.
Captain Grexus, I haven't seen you since you vanished without a trace, right after you were proved innocent.
It was shameful of me, I know, but I simply couldn't bear to witness how others suffered for your father's misgivings.
You are talking about a house purged for charges of heresy.
House Van Winter was filled with shady elements, no question about that. Some of them even kept me as a prisoner.
Your point being?
Not all of them are backstabbing scoundrels. Ragnar deserves a clean slate, and you won't find a better ally in the sector. Apart from old Grexus, of course.
Start with telling me where I can find the Cavalier.
I overheard my former crew members gossiping about this cult, and a world they were planning to visit with the ship. I'll give your navigator the coordinates.
Alright, so that would be it. Van Winter Legacy. The Void Station of the Van Winter House held valuable information. The logbook of the family itself is still on their ship, the Astute Caviler. If I find this vessel, I may gain access to the ancient secrets of the family and finally learn where the ancestor of the Van Winters took Uther Tiberius millennia ago. Nathaniel Grexus, a captain of the rogue trader house, will help me trace the mysterious ship.
Grexus, you have led me to a world with a full-scale demonic outbreak and no Cavalier in the docks. Explain.
They must have changed her name.
And how are you planning to find her?
Trust old Grexus, Inquisitor. This upper hive is home to an enclave where the notable merchant princes lodge when they're passing through. All those Captain Fancy Pants, you see, not my lot. But they know all about the ships in the local systems.
You are forgetting the small matter of a demonic outbreak.
Trust me, those captains will be fine. All nice and cozy in their fortified palaces, waiting for the right time to make a run for it. Take me to the Enclave, and I'll make sure they help us.
Nothing like rogue traders to tend to just be very unscrupulous. And when I think about it, that's actually something
Grexus,
I never
you
really
seem
covered.
to be oddly untroubled by recent events.
My unrelenting devotion to the Emperor keeps my spirits high.
Well, that and your bottles of answer.
We all cope in our own different ways. I want to live to serve the Imperium.
As I was saying, rogue traders. Keep in mind, everything I say, my knowledge of the lore, it varies depending on how recently I've read the articles on it or read a book about it. But with what my memory serves, the rogue traders kind of function as merchants, pseudo-mercenaries, privateers, explorers, pretty much anything you can do in a ship falls within their purview to a degree. And I mean, there was even a kill team box centered around them, which was a group of rogue trader characters versus, once again, I never know how to pronounce it, whether it's Geller Pox or Jeller Pox, because I've heard Geller or Geller Fields pronounced both ways. and I'm too lazy to listen to an audiobook and have what is the G-Dub's official pronunciation.
Cleansing shots fired.
So I don't care that much to be like, oh, I need to know. It's like, nah. I know what I'm talking about. If you follow the lore, the ships, or the shields that keep the... I am trying to think while I'm speaking, and it's difficult right now. It's the shields that keep the warp out and everything else in. So you're not, flying through hell trying to get somewhere, and suddenly a demon pops out and is just like, I want your face as my face. But what happened with that is essentially they got a demon or warp plague, which is how the jellypox, skellypox, whatever infected are. But I think rogue traders are pretty cool. I'd like to see them introduced to 40K as more of a... I don't know if you could do them as a full-fledged faction because they're individuals. I'd like to see them somewhat support them to a degree and count them as effectively mercenary units. They can be applied to any army.
I see signs of a desperate battle. Somebody really wanted to protect this Vox station. I'll check the logs.
But yeah, the function as a unit that can be fielded, or a group that can be fielded within any faction's army, you could... I would say you could provide bonuses for working with Imperial and just general Empire man groups, but then that kind of makes them not really good mercenaries, because it's like, you either use them with Imperium faction-related units and do good, or don't, and have them be less effective. And of course then raise the question of, if you balance it around not having the faction buffs, then they become overpowered when they have them, and if you balance them around having the faction buffs, then they become underpowered without them. Unless you... you could do it, but they'd have to have a really long page for every unit, but you can make it so every faction provides a different buff. Granted, that'd be insanity for balancing, but it would be an interesting thing. Yo, there be rebellion and heresy in this hive city.
I have found records of a Vox message sent by an Arbites unit. They suspected that the demonic infestation had been brought in from off-world.
It must have been that cult that bought the ship.
Another reason to find the Cavalier.
Kill them all, I say. I reckon you'd say that too.
That's another thing, the Arbites, or Arbites, or how she pronounced it. It sounded dumb and I just kind of blanked. But they are... I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it. 40K version of Judge Dredd. Except not nearly as badass as Judge Dredd. But in general, willing to shoot someone and not care because it's the law, that kind of deal. Another faction that, I get it, it's essentially space police, or borderline planetary police, but I think it'd be really cool, because I'd love to have an army that's, because I would probably I wouldn't do competitive play. It's just not it's not my move, not the play here. I would rather do narrative fights and have, a fight against a Poxwalker heavy Death Guard that's like a vanguard force against some overwhelmed Imperial Guardsmen, Adeptus Arbites, and just random scraps. I think that'd be a cool narrative fight. Either being hold out as long as you can, or
What were you
hold
thinking?
locations.
I will accompany you, Grexus.
With all due respect, Inquisitor, someone needs to fend off the tide of chaos while I sit down with these esteemed gentlemen for a nice chit-chat.
You truly are trying my patience.
Thing is, I can't see anyone else here with the proper credentials to do this.
I'll take care of the filth. Hurry up, Grexus.
Oh yeah, this is before they added the, oh no, this doesn't need the defense point things. Never mind. But yeah, I think it'd just be cool to have those kind of last stand fights, and even though they don't really, because there's the Arbites and then there's the Space Marine ones, the Custodes, who defend the Imperial throne on Holy Terra, but
I found you guilty.
they actually have some decent amount of models and stuff that you can build. I don't know if they have a full army yet. It would be cool. I'd love to see them in a Dawn of War style game. Because within the lore, the Custodes are the biggest, baddest, toughest dudes of all Space Marines.
Did you find your contacts, Grexus?
But I think that'd be cool, because, like I said, they're the biggest bats. They're the best Space Marines of the Space Marines. I think within the lore, they're actually taller than your standard Space Marine, because they're made quite literally of different stuff. And speaking of made of different stuff and being tall or not, if you haven't read, it's like a little anthology book for, I can't remember, I think it's Tome of Fire. It's a Salamanders chapter Space Marine book, and it's really good. Like, the stories within it are good, and like there's one guy, one of the Space Marines, he has problems with another member of the chapter because the other member, it's literally like the one guy is essentially of a lower class on the planet. It's more like tribal stuff, I think. If I remember, I haven't read it in over a year,
Grexus,
but
I need an update. You are really
it was really
taking
good.
your time. Tell them that the Inquisition is taking care of the situation now.
But you get to see a nice side to Space Marines that I feel like no game ever properly does, and that's show what you could argue is the human side of them. You know, they are still, within degrees, human. They still have their own thoughts and feelings. They still have within the chapter their own conflicts and their own egos.
Loading.
Some Space Marines can't really shed the fact that they are from a planet or a caste that other members aren't. And I think that's really cool. Because every game just portrays them as these... Well, it doesn't help. Like, it doesn't help that the chapters don't really get... Non-Ultramarine chapters don't get as much love as they deserve.
Do you know where the ship went? I'm not in the mood for your tales. Get me to the Cavalier.
But it's just,
Found you guilty of heresy.
I wish Space Marines were shown a bit more dynamically, especially in games, because you could, I think, do almost a Band of Brothers, especially like a show, like a Band of Brothers style show with all the interpersonal stuff about Space Marines.
Loading.
Like, I remember seeing a little while ago a guy I followed, can't remember where online, but he was talking about how they were working on a Warhammer TV show for a while, but it ended up getting canned, and it touched on, you know, it started out on a planet that was initially controlled by the Imperium. It was a human colony, and the Empire Man just kind of forgot it existed. So what happened was the governor of the planet was just like, okay, well, the Empire's not doing much for us. We're gonna start wheeling and dealing with the Tau. And the Tau were cool. They're just like, okay, Guvesa, you're part of us now. For the greater good. And things started kind of going wrong, and the Empire showed up and was like, hey, yo, where's our shit? And the Empire, the governor's like, it's the Tau. They took it. They invaded. And the Tau were just like, yo, what the hell? You can't just pawn us off like this, dude. This was your idea. And so you have the Empire starting to go to war. And one of the things the guy had mentioned was there was a plan to have this old guy on the planet that people kind of avoided because he was supposed to be weird. And during like some of the conflict, it would get revealed that he was a former Space Marine. And of course, you know, that's former Space Marine isn't exactly a thing. So you would find out that he was actually one of the Fallen. So one of the Dark Angels who, during the Horus Heresy, rebelled against Lionel Johnson instead of joining him. And of course, with the Fallen, there's the question of were the Fallen right or wrong in what they did? Because that part of the lore has always been very hit and miss. And so it'd be interesting you have this character who isn't a servant of chaos, just happens to be a odd but good person within this community, and once it's revealed that he's the Fallen, suddenly Dark Angels, Space Marines show up and he has to flee. And they didn't get past writing that part before it got canned, but I was sitting there like, damn, I would have watched that show like there's no tomorrow. Because that sounds really interesting. My only concern would be, you know, make sure that the Tau look like the Tau. Because all I can think of is what was it, HBO, I think? HBO or Netflix or somebody, they did the new version of Watchmen. And I always remember seeing this picture of the guy who was playing Dr. Manhattan, and the guy looked like he should be like just the character design, the paint, the clothing, everything. The guy looked like he was part of a porn parody. It was that bad. Which, you know, that's to be expected when you're trying to compete with the original Watchmen movie, because even though people rag on that movie, it was still a pretty solid movie in my opinion, and Dr. Manhattan looked really good in it. So it's like trying to do some like TV version, it's gonna be scuffed, and that's kind of the problem they ran into. And that's what I kind of worry about, is like the Tau, you really gotta do a good job on the look of the Tau, otherwise it's gonna look bad. And you would need someone with a lot of experience and skill to make the armor look right. Because mean, Tau armor unto itself has a very unique look. And then if you really want to hammer it home, you gotta have, you know, battle suits and all that stuff. You gotta have your riptides in there. Or your crisis suits, you know. What self-respecting Tau doesn't just slap you in the face with 6 riptides and roll your army, you know? And that's just the kind of stuff is like... It was cool. The idea of the show was really cool. I just worry, like, there's a lot of ways that it can go wrong. And of course, there's always the problem of, even if the writers are big fans of 40K, you gotta convince executives. And executives don't care. It's like trying to explain stuff when you're working in IT.
Teleport beacon in range.
You can tell them all the stuff you want. You can tell them, oh yeah, we need this, 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 and this. And unless you can flat out be like, this will make things better. Like, making it as simple as possible, they're likely just gonna be like, no, I don't understand it, I don't care. And I'm just trying to imagine, like, HBO or Netflix or somebody and trying to explain just all the stuff for 40K to them. I just sit here and it's like, let me tell you about the Tau. Let me tell you about Necrons. I would love to see the office meeting. Okay, let me tell you about the Orcs. Just trying to explain that they're all latent psychics and that their combined belief in a thing alters reality. That they breed from mushrooms and are all essentially angry walking fungi and have no gonads whatsoever. None of their vehicles work, their guns don't work if you were to actually fire them or disassemble them. And that they all sound like British soccer or British football hooligans. I can't imagine explaining that. Just any business executive would be like, what the hell is this? This is supposed to be some super dark sci-fi fantasy? This sounds dumb as hell. And admittedly, it does. It's... Even my description is very reductive, but it's hard to explain this crap to people. Like, if you were to try to explain, like, the difference between the Eldar and Dark Eldar, well, the fastest and easiest way is Eldar are space elves and Dark Eldar are BDSM space elves. And if you were to mention that, someone would look at you and be like, what the hell is this? This just sounds dumb, you know? A bunch of gray-skinned elves wearing, like, gimp suits? What is this? And then, you know, if you can fully expound on it and explain things and show, you know, the visual aesthetic changes and the different units and explain, like, what a homunculus is and their effects on, like, the military of the Dark Eldar and, like, the city of Camorra and all this stuff and the webway. It makes it all interesting, but it's stuff you really have to be already interested in, otherwise it sounds... Either you don't want to hear about it, or you're just like, this is a lot of stuff to take in. I don't even remember how I got onto that, but regardless, I really want a 40K show. But of course, you know, the question becomes, do you... There's a few ways you could do it realistically. First and foremost, or like the first idea, is Monster of the Week. You know, this week we're on Planet Slam Dance fighting a chaos cult of Thousand Suns, and you're like, okay, some Zinchi boys, that's fine. And then every week, the Space Marine boys go on a new adventure. Where will it take them next week? You can do it. And you could actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you could do it pretty well if you did the X-Files approach, where you have your monster of the week and you have an overarching story that scatters throughout.
Loading.
And that every so often you have a part of the story that comes back, Oh, it turns out that Chaos Cult was helping prepare this planet for Abaddon's Black Crusade, or, oh, it's to help summon this specific Bloodthirster demon from the Warp, who's been chased by the main characters for a while, You get the idea. You build on it and you have it come back every so often.
Reloading.
But the idea is hit and miss, let's be real. Because you would have to make each group unique, or each effectively quote-unquote monster unique, but you need to have... I feel like it would most likely be multiple part things, like each new quote-unquote monster would be like a 3-part thing.
Of heresy.
Because otherwise it feels too sudden to just like, Space Marines drop on the planet, blap, 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 everybody's dead, let's go. You gotta, build up, and especially like this. This planet is currently having a demonic outbreak. This isn't, in theory, this would not be just, oh, the Inquisitor rolls up, busts out his Keck 9, goes skra, and mows down every single Chaos Cultist, and the planet's fine. Even in this character is effectively breaking through the main line, and then everybody else on the planet, and the planetary military, and all them, it's their job to kind of come back in and be like, okay, now we gotta clean up the mop-up effort, gotta clean out the rest of these idiots, shoot them, make sure everybody's a good little Imperial citizen, and move on. And especially with, like, Space Marines. Space Marines don't just, like, pop into a system like, oh, hang on, Brother Bubba here needs to get a Slurpee at the Space 7-Eleven, and there just happens to be demons. Like, that doesn't work. It would have to be, that's why I say 3 episodes, roughly, as kind of a micro campaign of like, oh, we're assisting this planet in this conflict on this world. We're gonna, our job is to be the vanguard, break into whatever, blap people in the face with our bolters, move on. Collect any information we need, and you have this kind of, you have a flow. You can even make it a campaign, like every season or 2 is a campaign within a system or a region, which would take the Monster of the Week to a greater scale, becoming, wouldn't even really be Monster of the Week anymore, it'd be Monster of the Season. But even then, it would have to be at most a season, because if you stretch it out too long, I can only watch an orc getting shot in the kneecaps so many times before I just get bored.
Ready to fight.
So you gotta mix up enough to keep people interested, and make sure the environments are unique and the characters are interesting, and there's a lot to it.
All clear, Grexus. I'm still waiting for the coordinates you promised.
Allow me to express the gratitude of the noble captains with a piece of valuable information.
Do you know the location of the Cavalier, Grexus?
Something like that, aye. These gentlemen have narrowed it down to one potential destination. Your tech priest will receive the data log soon.
Your cooperation is highly appreciated, Captain.
Does that mean I'm free to go?
As far as I'm concerned, you were never implicated in the Van Winter investigation. You can leave.
It was a pleasure working with you, Inquisitor. If you need any help in the future, come and find me. I'll get my old ship back, and I'll be out there, among the stars. At your command.
Alright, so that is all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. If you are new, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.